Hello, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching this, you're probably familiar with my um, LinkedIn content and maybe my Substack as well. Maybe a few other bits and bobs. I've started, as of now, this is the inaugural um, musings for the as yet named sort of recruitment variant of my podcast. So, for some of you might know, I have a podcast called The Top 10% with Craig Whiting, which is focused on, well, originally it was going to be about recruitment, but it kind of morphed after a few episodes into hedge funds, tech, talent, um, interviewing, what should engineers be doing to get a job in a fund, blah, blah, blah. It became very centered on that, which is great. I mean, I love talking about it. And we had some amazing guests like Lara Carty, Evelina Curtis, talking about, the psychology of performance improvement within financial services for engineers and similar, biological neural networks in Final Spark in Evelina's case. And then we had some other great guests from the fund world, from big tech. So I'm going to keep doing that. We've got a new season coming next year, but we did move a little bit off topic from recruitment, and I was quite happy for that to organically happen. But at the same time, I still feel like there's a space for some slightly expanded content within the recruitment sphere specifically, but not for other recruiters. There's a bunch of podcasts out there of recruiters talking about their recruitment journey, and the audience is other recruiters. What I want to talk about fundamentally is the industry and like why talent acquisition is so hard, what's going on with talent acquisition at the moment, why candidates are struggling in some cases to make progress, why clients are struggling to make hires, what agencies are doing that adds value, and maybe what they're doing that doesn't. And try and get into the mechanics of it, which is in a way similar to the webinars that I've been doing, that, they've been getting a bunch of guests, a bunch of viewers, just trying to explain mechanically, what's going on with this stuff, and trying to help people understand it and combat it better. So as it stands, I don't have a name for this, and I'll see how long it lasts before I get bored. I might not get bored, hopefully. But it will be a little bit of like a longer form content for people that like my stuff on LinkedIn and maybe want to go into some deeper detail around it. The thing that I don't know where to start with it is probably what would be interesting to talk about for a short one today. So probably AI and what's going on. So there's an emergence recently of AI platforms for... Actually, no, I'm not going to talk about that. I'll talk about that another time. Why do I think it is even worth me doing this? What's the benefit people are going to get out of it? So fundamentally, right, if you look at the market this year, it's probably the weirdest I've seen it in 17 years of doing this. So historically, if a market was up, it was up. And when it was up, there was demand, there was lots of jobs, money went up, people got jobs, there was a fight for talent. I think 2022 was probably the last time, 21, 22, where, if you could give a half decent account of yourself, you were getting a massive offer to go and join a company. Now, we've seen that normalize in the last few years with lots of redundancies and stuff like that. There is an argument that the cuts we've seen this year is just a continued normalization off the back of the growth in 21, 22. But fundamentally, when the market was up, it was up. When it was down, it would be down. Jobs would be down. Demand for candidates would be down. Compensation rates would be down. You kind of knew where you were. This year, it's very different. So for the vast majority of the marketplace, in terms of tech folk, it's a very, very tough market. There's lots of redundancies, there's lots of offshoring, there's lots of cuts, there's lots of people coming onto the market, there's lots of contracts not being renewed. Like I found out the other day, for example, HSBC are not renewing any contracts. I don't know the reason why. I don't know how true that is. Someone told me that's at HSBC and is not being renewed. Potentially all being offshored, I don't know. There's a lot of people that are going to be coming onto the job market. So you've got all these scenarios where there's a lot of cuts, there's a lot of people coming on the market. But then equally at the same time, you've got agencies like mine where we're hiring, we can't get enough people because we're so busy, we've got so many jobs. We've got clients that have got universal demand across the board, and frankly, like going crazy in terms of their appetite for talent. The difference is that appetite for talent is only for a very small section of the talent market. So you've got this dual economy in place where clients are hiring like crazy, but only for a very tiny proportion of the people in the market. And then for the majority of people in the market, they can see all these jobs everywhere, but they're not making any progress at all in terms of getting interviews. And then that's kind of being, there's layers of that as well, where like getting an interview is hard enough. Someone reads your CV and they reject it on the basis, this happened to me this week, someone with 20 years experience, and they were rejected on the basis that the person just didn't think they had enough to show for their career in 20 years in terms of achievement. This was someone on, I think it's like £900 a day or something like that, like a good rate in a bank. So it's a really tough market. And then on top of that, there are some issues where the mechanics of talent acquisition have changed fundamentally in the last year, but certainly the last 5 to 7 years. And there's a lot of people that are maybe 10 plus years of experience that last looked for a job, COVID time maybe, there or thereabouts, when realistically the phone would just ring, recruiters would call with opportunities, and it probably wasn't that hard to get a job. And those people are now coming back to the market and they're not making any progress. So they're coming in, they're making loads of applications, they're not getting any interviews. And they're struggling to understand why. Where is this coming from? Where am I going wrong? How can I make more progress? So the fundamental thing to understand in all of that is there's three main stakeholders in any talent acquisition process marketplace. Sorry, I'm sound like I'm waffling a bit right now. I'm very, very tired. There's a client, there is the candidate, and then there is the recruiter. The thing to understand about the last 5 to 7 years is the client and the recruiter have fundamentally changed the way they work in terms of recruitment and talent acquisition. The recruiters have changed for two main reasons. Client also. The third stakeholder, which is the candidate, hasn't really changed at all in terms of their way of finding something new. And the issue there is that you're left not really playing the game anymore within the new rules. You're playing by the old rules, and that's why you're not making progress. So what does that mean in reality? If you look at clients, historically, let's say 10 years ago, a client would have a supplier list of maybe 4 or 5 agencies. They might list jobs on their website, but no one would really look at that anyway. When they needed to hire someone, they would go to their 4 or 5 agencies. Those 4 or 5 agencies predominantly would work off a proprietary database that was exclusive to their organization. And that database would be capped with a finite amount of people on the basis that there's only so many people you can get in it. The agencies would probably send a mail shot out to their database. So they'd run a basic search. They'd get keywords, get a list of like, say, 300 people or whatever, send a mail shot out to all those people saying, hey, I got a new job. And then they'd start going through the list, calling people that they felt were a good match. What that meant for the candidate is that you probably had a lot of recruiters calling you about the same job to the point where they got quite annoying, but you had a flow regularly of opportunity. When those agencies had done what they needed to do, they'd maybe send 5 CVs to a client. If you've got 4 agencies sending 5 CVs, that's 20 CVs for the client to review. The client goes through them, maybe selects 10 to 12 for first interview, 6 to 8 for second interview, 3 for third interview, 2 for final interview, whatever. Point is, the candidates have much more flow of jobs coming out because there was much less of them on the databases of the recruiters. Secondly, they're on the database of the recruiters had their CVs. so they could actually read what they've done and match the jobs. They had content and they had context with regard to these individuals. When they sent the CVs to the clients now only had 20 people to go through. It didn't take forever, and nobody hired the best person for a job. They just hired the best person who's available now for the job that you're hiring for at the same time. It's always just the closest you can get to what you want at the time that you need it. So they've only got 20 CVs to consider. They might have a benchmark interview, metric of like, I need someone who can do 70% of what I say I need them to do. You get in for interviews. So for candidates, you'd have a lot more interviews. You'd have a lot more oversight of jobs. You'd have a lot more flow. The whole thing wouldn't seem that difficult. So what's changed in the last, say, 10 years since then? On the client side, they've all piled into LinkedIn as the primary method of talent acquisition. And they now post all their jobs and they invite you to apply directly. What does that do to their CV numbers and flows? Well, it pushes them up through the roof. So instead of now having your 20 CVs from 4 different agencies when you went to hire someone in 10 years ago, now you're putting the same job advert out, but you're getting hundreds of applications within minutes, sometimes thousands. A lot of those applications aren't relevant, but you've still got them. So you've got to go through them. You've got to filter them. You've got to find the right people. In addition, they're still using agencies. But agencies now don't go to their proprietary databases. They go to LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is their database. Agencies pay a lot of money for recruiter licenses so they can manipulate searches in LinkedIn Recruiter and they can find people. But when I run a search now in LinkedIn, I'm fighting to get it down to sort of a couple of hundred people. Because if I'm not too tight on my keywords, I'm going to have 4,000 or 5,000 people in my search. It's far too many to go through. So I'm having to find ways to arbitrarily cut people out of that search by being super finite on the search criteria, just to get it to something manageable. So I'm now, say I can get it to 200 odd people. I'm back to where I were in the database days, maybe the same volume, but I don't have a mechanism to mail shot all of those people. The people in that search are governed by my ability or that lack of to put together a good search and find them. Because the critical difference is on the database, I had the content and the context of their CVs. I could work out what they did. LinkedIn is written very subjectively. Some people don't really put any information. Some people put lots. Some people, they don't really talk about what they do. They talk about what they're interested in, their activities they do, their causes that they follow, whatever. So all of a sudden, I'm now building a search where I've got a lot less information to evaluate people on with regard to who I'm going to reach out to. I can't reach out to everyone, so I'm being a lot more selective. And then I'm sending emails and I'm maybe cold calling people or whatever. But if you're Mr. Candidate or Mrs. Candidate that used to be in that batch of 200-300 in the database just getting called all the time about jobs, the odds of you still being in my 200-300 is now far reduced. So what does that mean in reality? Well, one, you can see the jobs with the clients. You apply directly, you don't make any progress because you're one of thousands or hundreds, and the odds that you're even going to get reviewed is pretty low. You might be passed through some sort of like AI ATS thing that's going to filter you based on keywords relevant to the job spec. So then you've got questions of, well, how much alignment is there? How accurate is the job spec relative to what the client even want? How relevant is your profile? How keyword dense is it? How is the terminology of those keywords relative to the terminology of the job spec, etc., for you to even be viewed? So you're putting stuff into the ether, you can see all the jobs, but you don't really feel like you're making any progress. And then on the agency side, it's slowing right down in terms of the communication from agencies because they can't find you as easily because you're just one of a massive stack of people now. So the net result is, it seems to me for candidates, the number of good, valuable recruiter interactions is going down. The phone isn't ringing anymore. The inbox isn't pinging anymore. Everything's in LinkedIn, but it's drips and drabs and it's not really always relevant because people can't really tell what you do. At the same time, you can see 1 million jobs on LinkedIn and you've applied for all of them, but you don't make any progress. So you develop this disenfranchisement with the industry where you just go, it doesn't work anymore. Because I'm applying for all these jobs. I'm not getting any interviews. Recruiters aren't calling me. The ones that are calling me with things I'm not really interested in because my profile doesn't have enough detail on it for them to work out what I do anyway. And there's a massive feeling of recruitment is broken. And it isn't. It's just different. And candidates, I think, need to adapt to that. Because what's happening now is it's almost like the Netflix effect where there's too much choice for recruiters and for companies. The challenges that throws up on the recruiter side is if the recruiter is not knowledgeable enough to really know what they're looking for and know how to find it, they're not going to find the right people. They're going to send irrelevant outreach. On the client side, it's, yeah, you can cut agencies out and save some money, sure. But then how much money do you lose in time spent from people filtering through profiles, looking at the wrong people? What are you going to do now that AI is kind of making CVs to mirror match job descriptions? Are you going to interview a lot of people that look great on paper and then, don't stack up in the room because it's all fraudulent? There's a lot of questions around this. But fundamentally, to sort of sum up, I feel like I've waffled a bit in this. As I said, very, very tired. But to sum up, the market's changed. The reason candidates feel like it's slipping beyond their grasp is because they haven't changed with it. Clients and recruiters have. If you're in the wrong batch at the moment, if you're in the 90% that are struggling, there are things that you can do. And this is things I talk about a lot on LinkedIn, and I intend to talk about a lot in this series of videos that I'm going to make. What I'd like to happen is for this to become like an expansion of the webinars that I've been doing, whereby people can ask me questions, I can answer them, I can give some value, I can lift the veil a little bit, I can show some stuff that recruiters are doing. The goal is to help people get better at navigating the market, whether that's clients in terms of their hiring, candidates in terms of their job searching, job seeking, just knowing how to generate inbound opportunities, knowing the mechanics. And then also recruiters, maybe they get something out of this and they can get a bit better at it. But fundamentally, recruitment is a great industry and everyone needs it. And whether you're going to do it direct or whether you're going to do it through an AI platform or whether you're going to do it for an agency or whatever, everyone's going to be doing some recruitment stuff in the premise of hiring or getting a job. And everyone is interested in this stuff because, we all work and we want to get paid for it and we want good jobs. So there's going to be some value, I hope, for some people to get into this stuff. So that's the intention. That's what we're going to do. Next one I'll try and do when I've hopefully got a bit more energy and not waffle so much. So if you've stuck with me till now, appreciate it.